I wish parents would listen to me and learn from my story. Some of the things people dismiss as fairy tales are actually true life experiences, and mine is one of them. My name is Sonia, and this is my life story. It all began on the 16th day of July 2014, a day I thought was another milestone. I had just passed my common entrance exam and was finally preparing for life in a boarding school. My parents were proud, my neighbors congratulated me, and I myself was excited to wear the uniform of one of the most respected schools in my area. I never knew that was the day my life would take a turn I could never have imagined. On the day of resumption, I came to the school with my parents. The gate was full of freshers and their families, dragging boxes and buckets. At the entrance, we were checked in by the school staff. Our names were ticked on a long list and each of us was assigned to different hostels. I remember clutching my metal box nervously as we walked into the hostel. My parents helped me unpack, arranging my provisions on the shelf, spreading my bed neatly and filling my bucket with water. They gave me plenty of advice, even money to keep for emergencies. But the moment came that every child dreads. They had to leave. I hugged them tightly, tears rolling down my cheeks. Mommy, Daddy, don't go, please, I cried. Be strong, Sonia. It's for your good. You'll be fine, okay? Mom said, stroking my hair. You're a big girl now, so make us proud, Dad said, smiling. I watched them walk away, waving until I couldn't see them anymore. A cold emptiness filled me. I felt so sad and lonely. That was my first night in the hostel. By weekend, an announcement was made. As a rule in the hostel, every JSS1 student was to be given a school mother, a senior girl assigned to guide and protect her. To us juniors, it felt like a privilege. We were excited, whispering and guessing which senior would pick us. We believed our school mothers would love us like older sisters. When it was my turn, I was placed under Senior Rose. Unknown to me, she was not only feared but also she was secretly a witch. There were 5 of us assigned to her as school daughters. We thought we were lucky because she seemed so kind and generous compared to the other seniors. How wrong we were. One evening, Senior Rose called the 5 of us into her corner of the hostel. My lovely daughters, you've done well since you came. I prepared something special for you. Don't tell the others, okay? On the table was a big bowl of golden morn, soaked with powdered milk and enough sugar. We gasped. Food in boarding school was scarce, and here was our school mother offering us such a great treat. Eat, don't be shy. I made this specially for you people, Senior Rose said. We didn't hesitate. We collected the bowls and ate happily, laughing and thanking her for being the best school mother. We never knew that what we were eating wasn't ordinary food. We were being initiated. That night, after eating the golden morn that Senior Rose prepared for us, I went to bed thinking it was just another evening in the hostel. I didn't know that a hidden door had already been opened inside me. At exactly 1 a.m., something strange happened. I felt a sudden pull in my chest, like invisible hands were dragging me. I tried to shout, but my mouth could not open. Then, in a moment, I saw my body lying stiffly on the foam. At the same time, I was standing right beside it. My spirit had separated from my body. Fear ran through me like cold water. I wanted to run back into my body, but I couldn't. When I looked around, the same thing had happened to the other 4 girls, my fellow school daughters. Their bodies were still on their bunk, but their spirits too stood like pale shadows next to them. Before I could even think of what to do, something began to drag us. I wasn't walking, I was gliding, as if the air itself was carrying me. I moved straight through the locked hostel door, as if it wasn't there. I reached out to hold the iron frame, but my hand passed through it like smoke. We were being pulled by a strange force, and no matter how I tried, I couldn't resist it. We saw ourselves flying high in the sky. We were taken to the back of the school compound near the old mango tree. To my shock, a large crowd was already waiting there. It wasn't only students. I saw faces I didn't recognize too. Some looked like teachers, some like strangers from outside the school, some senior students, some junior students too. Their eyes were empty and cold, yet fixed on us. On the ground was a big chalk circle, carefully drawn. In the middle sat a clay pot with fire burning inside. Fire that burned without wood, smoke without sound. The moment my feet touched the circle, something happened. It was as though my own will left me. My heart was still racing with fear, but my body no longer listened to me. I was charmed. From that moment, every movement I made wasn't mine. We all knelt, not because we chose to, but because an unseen hand pressed us down. One after the other, we were given a small calabash to drink from. Inside was a dark liquid, thick and bitter. My hands trembled when it was placed before me, but I could not resist. My body lifted the bowel on its own and I swallowed. The taste was sharp, metallic and burning. Immediately, I felt something cold spread inside me, like ice water flowing through my veins. It sank into my chest and sat there like a heavy stone. After that, strange marks were drawn on our palms. They used chalk mixed with reddish powder, and as soon as it touched my skin, my hands burned as though hot coal had been pressed into it. I wanted to cry out, but my mouth was sealed. No sound came out. When I looked at others, their eyes were glazed, their faces stiff. We were no longer ordinary girls. We had just been given over. The chanting around us grew louder. Dozens of voices, rising and falling in strange tones. The pot of fire suddenly lifted into the air, floating above us without anything holding it. I froze in terror. People began to clap and dance around the circle. Some spun in the air without touching the ground. The atmosphere was thick, heavy and dark. Then something happened that shocked me to the core. One of the girls with me, the youngest of us, suddenly screamed. Her body convulsed violently, and then a deep, strange voice began to speak through her. It wasn't her voice at all. It was something else, something ancient and terrifying. The words rolled out like thunder, and though I didn't understand them fully, I knew what they meant. We had been accepted. We are no longer free. We are now in bondage. At that moment, I realized this wasn't a childish game. This wasn't just senior students being wicked. It was real. It was deep. It was spiritual. And I was now a part of it. I cannot tell how the meeting ended. One moment the chants were rising like waves. The next, I felt myself being pulled backward, flying through the night sky. In an instant, I was back inside the hostel, sliding into my body on the bunk. My eyes opened wide. Sweat covered my body. My chest was heavy and I could barely breathe. When I turned, I saw the other four girls gasping too, their eyes wide open with the same fear. But none of us spoke a word. We just lay there pretending to sleep. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was all a dream. But when I looked at my palm, my heart sank. There it was, a faint red mark, strange and glowing softly. I tried to rub it off. I washed it with soap, sponge and water, but it didn't go. That was the day I knew it was real. That was the day I knew my life had changed forever. At first, I thought the initiation was just a nightmare. It was just a nightmare I would wake up from. But it wasn't. Days turned into weeks, and the gift of the initiation began to show in my life. One hot afternoon, during lunch break, a senior called me, her eyes glowing strangely as she whispered, "Test your power. Think of something you once did." At first, I laughed. "How? I don't understand," I said. She bent close, her voice hissing like a snake. "Focus on that hen scratching outside the hostel window. Stare at it and whisper, 'Die.'" I froze. My heart pounded. I fixed my eye on the poor chicken, muttered the words, and in less than a minute, it jacked violently and collapsed dead. I froze. My lips trembled. Did, did, did I just do that? The senior smiled wickedly. "Power sweet, Abi." "You are now one of us," she jingled. That was the day I tested what power felt like. From then on, my confidence grew. Whenever juniors annoyed me or classmates mocked me, I didn't need to shout. I would just whisper a curse under my breath, and within days, sickness or misfortune would visit them. Soon, fear began to spread across the hostel. Nobody dared touch my things. Nobody argued with me. Even seniors treated me with unusual respect. But the more I used my power, the deeper I was drawn into the witchcraft. We were no longer just junior obeying instructions. We were gradually being trained as leaders of darkness. Our midnight meetings increased. Sometimes we gathered in the school toilet, other times behind the dining hall. But most times our spirits traveled out through the air to forests and rivers beyond human eye. And soon I discovered another kind of fun: initiating others. Initiation became like a game to us. Whenever we spotted an innocent or fearful junior, we would plan how to draw them in. Some cried, Some resisted, but in the end they joined. We laughed at their tears, boasting of how our family was growing. It was no longer just about obeying seniors, we did it for our own pleasure. Watching their fear, their trembling during the oaths gave us a strange excitement. It was our version of entertainment. Before long, I was no longer just a victim, I had become an initiator. An initiator. By this time, our sense of right and wrong was gone. We found pleasure in other people's pain. If someone insulted us in school, we would laugh and say, let's see what happens to her tomorrow. And surely something bad would happen. An illness, an accident, or sudden embarrassment in public. I remember one day a teacher scolded me harshly in class. That night during our midnight gathering, I whispered her name into the circle. The very next day, she was bedridden with a strange fever that no doctor could diagnose. I walked past her office smiling coldly to myself. It was all fun to us. The more chaos we caused, the more powerful we felt. Instead of guilt, we felt pride. Instead of sorrow, we felt amusement. We laughed at tears. We mocked pain. And the more people feared us, the more addicted we became to that fear. Soon, the darkness followed me home. When I returned for holiday, I no longer saw my family the way I used to. To me, they were ordinary people, powerless, ignorant, blind, and sometimes just for the thrill of it, I released misfortune into the house. If my mother annoyed me, I would mutter under my breath, and within few days she would misplace money, burn food, fall down, or fall ill suddenly. If my siblings played roughly with me and refused to share something, I would teach them a lesson. They would fall, injure themselves, or become a disgrace, or be disgraced in front of their friends. And all the while, I would sit back smiling in secret, knowing I was the unseen pan behind it. To everyone else, it looked like normal incident. But to me, it was entertainment. My parents never suspected. They only saw a normal daughter, eating, laughing, and preparing for the next term. Maybe they were too busy, or maybe they were not spiritually alert or prayerful enough to discern the evil presence in their home. Little did they know that their child had become a channel of darkness. By then, I was completely addicted to the power. Fear fed me, misfortune amused me, pain gave me pleasure. It was as though I lived two lives: the smiling, obedient child my parents, family thought they knew, and the hidden queen of mischief who enjoyed wrecking lives in secret. But what I did not realize was that the more fun I had, the deeper the chains on my soul became. Each act of cruelty was another cord binding me to the kingdom of darkness. By the time I entered SS1, I was no longer that naive girl who cried when she was first initiated. No, I had now become a full-grown mistress of charms. My powers matured. My powers had matured. My confidence had doubled, and my daring spirit had no limits. It started gradually. I realized I could use my power not only for mischief but for personal advantage. Charming the teachers. In school, every teacher seemed to take a strange liking to me. No matter what I wrote in my exams, my grade always came out excellent. When I studied, it was as if my brain absorbed knowledge supernaturally. But even on days I wrote nonsense, my papers returned with distinctions. The truth was simple. I had charmed my teachers. They praised me openly in class. She is one of the brightest students we've ever had. But deep down, I had known it was a lie. covered with supernatural blindness. Soon, teachers began fighting over who would claim me as their student. They recommended me for competitions and pointed me to leadership positions and trusted me more than anyone else. At night, when other students were locked inside the hostel, we would charm the security guards, then sneak out. We sneaked out countless nights to clubs, to hidden gatherings, even to witchcraft meetings in the forest. By then, we were back in the school and nobody suspected a thing. I lacked nothing. If I admired someone's shoe, within a week the person would mysteriously lose them. They would find their way to me. If I wanted money, students would suddenly begin borrowing and never collecting back. If I fancied gifts, admirers would bring them to me without me asking. Even the strictest teacher gave me special treatment. Late assignments excused, noise making ignored, breaking rules. They would smile and say, Sonia cannot do such a thing. Oh, I was untouchable. By SS2, something shocking happened. Despite all the atrocities I've been committing, despite being feared, despite bullying juniors, despite sneaking out, despite being arrogant and rude, I was chosen as the senior prefect of the school. It was laughable at first. The same girl who terrorized others, who enjoyed seeing students cry, was crowned the leader of discipline and morals. The day of the announcement, the entire assembly clapped, but I noticed the silence of the junior students. They didn't clap. They only stared at me with wide, frightened eyes. They knew what the teachers didn't know. To them, I was a leader. To them, I was not a leader. I was the queen of darkness. My classmates feared me because they knew anyone who offended me would face strange consequences. Juniors trembled when I passed. Some would hide, others would bow. They know the stories of what I had done. How one girl mocked me and the next they developed swollen face that never went down. How another refused to run errands for me and later fainted in class for no reason. Fear became my shield and power became my pride. By SS2, I thought I had everything under control. I was the senior prefect, the most feared girl in school, and the teachers trusted me blindly. Juniors bowed when I passed. My classmates obeyed me without question, and even the strictest authority treated me with respect. But inside, I was empty. My nights were no longer peaceful. Instead of flying freely as before, I started having terrifying nightmares. Sometimes I saw myself chained by the very power I thought I controlled. Other times I woke up drenched in sweat, hearing voices whisper my name. I smiled during the day, but at night I was tormented. When a new set of freshers entered that term, I wasted no time. As usual, I started being friendly with them and initiating them. Then came I initiated several of them into our circle within few weeks of resumption. Then came this girl named Vera. At first glance, she looked like any other timid junior, but there was something different about her. Her calmness, her constant prayer, and the little Bible she carried everywhere. I marked her as my next target, confident she would eventually bow like the rest. But to my surprise, she didn't. The failed attempts. The first time I approached Vera, I promised myself she must bow. I approached her and promised her influence. Follow me and no one will ever bully you again, I whispered. No senior would ever beat you again. She smiled gently and said, I already have a protector, Jesus Christ. I felt an unusual sting in my shirt, but I ignored it. The second time I tried intimidating her. I threatened her, warned her of what would happen if she refused. She still flinched. She still didn't flinch. Instead, she whispered a short prayer under her breath, right in front of me. The third time, I used my strongest charm. Each time she woke up unharmed, while I grew weak and more frustrated. It was as though an invisible wall shielded her. For the first time since my initiation, I met a resistance I couldn't break. What happened next struck me to the core. Instead of keeping quiet, Vera went straight to the school management and boldly reported me. She told them everything, how I tried to lure her, how she saw me sneaking out at night, and how other students were being initiated. At first, I laughed. Who would believe her? I had charmed almost every teacher, but this time something pierced through the veil. The school authority didn't ignore her. Within days, a special revival program was announced. A strong man of God was invited, known for his fire-filled ministrations. When I heard it, my heart skipped. For the first time in years, I felt fear. The revival started on Wednesday evening. The atmosphere was different. Charged, heavy, almost suffocating. Students filled the hall. Choristers were singing. Drums echoed loudly. We, the witchcraft members, sat at the back mocking as usual. But deep inside, my spirit was trembling. When the preacher mounted the stage, his first words cut through me like a sword. There are some of you here who wear this school uniform but belong to darkness. You think you are in control, but tonight, I say tonight, God will expose you. Tonight, you must choose life. My life had died instantly. It was as though he was staring right into my soul. As prayer began, the preacher shouted, Lift up your hands and call on Jesus. Everyone obeyed. Students clapped, shouted and prayed, but I couldn't. My hands were heavy, my lips refused to move. Suddenly, my body started shaking. Within minutes, I was on the floor, screaming in a strange voice that wasn't mine. Other members of our witchcraft fell too. Rolling, shouting, manifesting violently. The preacher pointed towards us and declared, Every covenant of witchcraft, break in the name of Jesus. I screamed louder. It felt like invisible chains were being torn from inside me. My stomach twisted, my head burned, my whole body convulsed. Strange substances came out of my mouth. I was fighting for life. Hours later, exhausted and drenched in sweat, I heard the preacher's voice close to me. Jesus has set you free, but now you must confess. At first I resisted, but then, as if pushed by an unseen force, I staggered to the front of the hall. My voice trembled as I spoke. I was part of a witchcraft. I used charms on teachers. I sneaked out at night. I've destroyed so many lives. I've initiated so many people. I've killed so many people. I've caused so much misfortune. I tried to initiate Vera, but she refused, and now I see she was right all along. But as I confessed, I felt a weight lift. Chains truly fell. The school shaking. That night, dozens of students confessed. Deliverance broke out everywhere. Some screamed, some vomited, some fainted. The hall turned into a battlefield between darkness and light. By dawn, the school was no longer the same. Some seniors who refused to repent were taken for special prayers, and the later confessed and were delivered. My parents were summoned to school. When they heard everything, my mom collapsed in tears, and my father, who rarely showed emotion, broke down crying. And me, I lay on my bed and I staring at the ceiling, haunted by a question. Would God really forgive me for everything I had done? For all the lives I've destroyed? I asked silently. When I woke up the morning after deliverance, everything felt different. The usual chatter in the hostel, the laughter of juniors, even the footsteps on the corridor seemed muted, as if the world had slowed down just to let me realize the weight of my sin. My uniform felt heavy on my shoulders, a reminder that I was no longer just Sonia, the feared senior prefect. I was Sonia, the delivered but broken girl, trying to piece herself back together. When my parents arrived at the school, the reality hit harder than anything I had ever experienced. My mother's tears streaked down her face, and my father's silence sat staring at the floor. Why? Why didn't you tell us? My mother whispered, her voice trembling. Her voice trembled. I had no words. Confession became my only refuge. I told them about the charms, the sneaking out at night, the terror I caused among junior and my colleagues and senior colleagues as well, the dark acts I had participated in. Hearing their voices break as they processed the truth was unbearable. That day, I realized that deliverance freed me from spirits, but it could not erase the pain I had caused in people's lives. Deliverance was only the first step. The nightmares persisted. Shadows lingered in corners of my dormitory. Whispers echoed in the middle of the night, and sometimes I woke up screaming, reliving moments of terror and guilt. I learned to pray before sleep, keeping the Bible under my pillow and clinging to it till dawn. Slowly, with guidance from the pastor who had ministered to me, I began to understand that healing was a process. Freedom is not the absence of temptation. Freedom is the strength to say no when darkness comes knocking, he taught me. The first few weeks were the hardest. Every time I walked past junior students or a new student, I felt a shadow of my old desires to intimidate, control, or charm. But each time I prayed, and each time I resisted. Months after my deliverance, I was asked to share my story at a school chapel. My hands shook as I held the microphone, and my voice trembled. I was once deep in darkness. I wore the school uniform and I smiled at teachers. But in the night, I bowed before powers I thought I controlled. God pulled me out. If he can save me, he can save anyone. Surrender to him and give your life to him. As I spoke, other students came forward. Some confessed to hidden cult afflictions, some to struggles with sin, some to struggles to addictions, some struggles with addictions and oppression. My testimony, instead of shaming me, became the key to set others free. I joined a small outreach team that visited other schools, warning students about curiosity, peer pressure, and the dangers of secret spiritual practices. Each encounter reinforced the lesson I had learned. Light can only be shared after a darkness is acknowledged. Even months later, the battle was ongoing. Temptation still knocked at my door. One afternoon, I felt the cold hunger for control surge within me when I saw a timid junior girl, a girl I once would have tormented, but instead of giving in, I whispered a prayer. Lord, please deliver me. I felt strength returned. I learned that relapse was not failure. It was a chance to choose God's path one more time. Once more. Whenever I shared my story, I leave these truths as warning and guidance. Parents, pray for your children. Notice their behavior. Listen to their fears and do not ignore their struggles. Youths, be wary of peer pressure and hidden influence. Not all invitations are harmless. Some open doors, once open, are nearly impossible to close. Schools, watch carefully. Evil can hide. Schools, watch carefully. Evil can hide behind bright eyes and neat uniform. My scars remind me of where I came from. There are also a testimony of mercy. Though my past is dark, my future shines with bright lights. Light I now carry to help others walk away from the darkness before it claims them.